There is so much power in heterosis. It's what makes you different. It's what makes you stand out. It's your own type of, like I talked about with genetic defects being a cheat code. This is your genetic cheat code whenever you have heterosis. But don't be short-sighted in now, because it not only hurts you and your operation in the future, it hurts the entire industry. A lot of times we do that through line breeding. Some people call it line breeding, some people call it inbreeding, and they say the difference is when it works, it's line breeding. When it doesn't, it's inbreeding. It is a beautiful day that the Lord has made. Thank you all for tuning in. Today, we're going to get back on the topic of breeding livestock. I absolutely love talking about breeding, especially cattle. But what we're going to talk about is very relevant, whether you're in the sheep and goat industry, the pig industry, the cattle industry, seed stock, or crossbred and show cattle. So y'all tune in, sit back, get ready to dig into this topic. And that is breeding for the quick dollar better than breeding for the future? And can the two coexist? And if so, how? These are fun topics to get into because a lot of times whenever I'm looking at my cows and I'm making my breeding decisions, I know that, hey, if I use this bull, I can sell them. They're going to look good early. Whenever sale time comes, that's a hot name. That's a trendy look. It's stuff that I know people are going to like. The color's going to be right. Everything's going to be right for them to sell easy. But then the breeder side of me is like, do I believe that they can win in the end? Maybe, maybe not. And also, it's like, is this where I want to go? And if I get females, are they ones I want to keep? Whenever our show industry is as good as it has been and selling these show animals is as good as it has been the last few years, we can kind of, as breeders, be conned into breeding for the dollar and breeding for that quick return because we know when that calf's 5 months old, I can sell it. It's what people want. If I say that it's out of a different bull, if it has a little bit of a different look early on in life, I may not be able to sell it as good. So why would I not use bull X, Y, or Z? Whenever I do that though, what am I sacrificing in the long term? A lot, if you look at, particularly in the show calf industry right now, and I know that y'all other livestock people can relate in your worlds, you're like, man, everything is a in God we trust or a here I am. Have we bred ourselves into a corner? What options do we have? Now, you can always follow the dollar to figure out why we trend in the direction that we trend. So I'm not going to tell you from a business standpoint that the way we've been breeding is wrong or some of the decisions that we're making are wrong, especially if they've helped make you profitable. But in the long term, have we got ourselves in such a tight corner that it's going to be hard to get out of it? Or where is that off ramp that we can use to get off and continue to escalate and be relevant in the show ring? So whenever I look at this and try to make my breeding decisions, I can kind of melt those expectations down into, if I can answer this question, if I get the resulting offspring, if I'm excited about it being a breeding piece just as much as I am to sell it and go into the show ring, then that's a mating that I personally want to do because that has some future in it. That has a little bit of where I see the industry, where I see my personal herd, where I want it to go, and not so much short-sighted of I know this will sell and I know this will sell now. A perfect example of this is in the crossbred world, using a purebred bull of some sort. Whenever you do this, when making steers in the short term, you're kind of taking a step back. A lot of times those cattle aren't quite as competitive. They don't have quite the punch and the trendy look and size and rate of growth as the others. And that can be a good thing. However, it can also be a limiting factor in how much you sell them for. It can be a limiting factor of their ceiling whenever you're trying to show them at the end. But what it can do is give you a set of females that in the future can take you to a whole nother level and set you apart, because other people weren't willing to sacrifice the short term to gain in the long term. Because that set of females can create this explosion of new blood, of fresh stuff that's going on, and you then become the unique one. Your cattle have a different look. Your cattle are set apart in a different way, but that was probably a 5 to 9 year setback that you took there. And so the decision that you make, the purebred bull that you're going to use, or the outcross sire that you're going to use, you need to be right on that, and you need to believe in it for the long term, because it's going to take a lot of patience and a lot of time to get to where you are actually ahead of the game. You can follow the trend and you can continue beyond the game, and in the long term, you're going to have to make a move. But if you make some sacrifices for the short term, it can set you up for success in the long term. Now, what does this look like? There is a yo-yo. There is this balance that goes on between breeders that are tried and true, that are at the top of their game, that are always the ones that everybody else is chasing. It's this continuum, this yo-yo scheme of chasing homozygosity and heterozygosity. Now, what is that? And why would I bring that up? So whenever you're homozygous, that means your gene pool is very consistent and dominant. You have locked in certain genes. Whenever you're heterozygous, that means the opposite. That means you have a lot of heterosis in there, which is performance. These genes aren't locked in. There's a dominant allele and a recessive allele attached to each one, but there's a lot of hybrid vigor, a lot of performance, a lot of heterosis in these animals. This gives you that extra punch. To lock in homozygosity, a lot of times we do that through line breeding. Some people call it line breeding, some people call it inbreeding, and they say the difference is when it works, it's line breeding. When it doesn't, it's inbreeding. Now, why would it work and why would it not? Whenever you lock in traits as homozygous, that's where you get consistency. If you have an animal that you love, then you want to make more of them that look like that one, right? So I want to lock in these traits. I think of dogs, I think of race horses and their bloodlines. Whenever you have something, they make it very tight. They make that bloodline tight, and that's how you get so consistent. You look at the golden retriever and how much they all look the same, and there's certain bloodlines that have certain features. In good seed stock breeders, you can look at the heads of the cattle and like, hey, I know that this one belongs to the 380 bull. I know that this one belongs to 160, just off certain features, because you have homozygosity. They're locked in. There's some line breeding associated with that. So in line breeding, probably if you look across all species and you look at inbreeding coefficients and what works and what doesn't, probably the best or most popular way to do it is breeding half sibs together. So say you have a dominant donor cow and you want to make things that look like her, you would flush or breed her to different sires, take those offspring out of the different sires that have the traits that you want from that cow and breed them together. And the closer that, the higher that inbreeding coefficient gets, the tighter all those genes get, and you kind of lock in these certain traits. Now, whenever it doesn't work, whenever it becomes inbreeding, that means you locked in a trait that you didn't know was there, and it popped up, and then you saw it whenever it became a dominant trait, a homozygous trait. And then you're going to have to breed back away from that because it's kind of a hidden gene that was in there that wasn't showing itself. But whenever you can get an animal that locked in all the good ones, that's what you want. Now, here's the yo-yo. You breed to lock in, you breed to lock in, you breed to lock in. Now, what do? If I want to create an explosion of heterosis, even within the same breed, if I raise Angus cattle and I have a line of cattle that are extremely homozygous and locked in, and I want to create some punch and performance and just something unique and different in this line, then I can outcross that. And a very easy thing to do is breed it to another breed, breed it to something opposite of what it is. So the very popular thing to do in the commercial world, breed it to a Charolais bull, right? That is opposite. And so you create this explosion, this heterosis. But what if you're an Angus breeder, you're not going to breed to a outcross bull, so you're going to breed to outcross genetic line. If there's another genetic line that you like, and it's also line bred, and they have traits locked in, and they're homozygous for what is good here, and you think these two animals are going to complement each other, but they are not related, you can create heterosis within that breed whenever you cross them. And then all those genes then become heterozygous. And in that, you get that explosion, that punch, because we want to be consistent, but at the same time, we want to be unique and stand out. We get better whenever we become unique, and then we lock that in and be consistent, and then we change it up and be unique again. And so that's that yo-yo that I'm talking about, of locking in the genes that you like, outcrossing them to create that explosion, and then locking them back in and then outcrossing them again. Like I said, the very simple way to do that is opposite breeds. But within a breed, you can also do that by different lines of cattle or sheep or goats or hogs. Now, when you do this, there is also, it's not all roses. You know, you get the deformities and stuff that come with inbreeding, but also you need to be very cognizant of traits in your cattle that are highly heritable and lowly heritable. So a highly heritable trait is one that's easily passed on. So a trait like fertility is a highly heritable trait. If this cow is fertile, there's a very good chance her offspring are going to be fertile. If that cow is infertile, there's a good chance her offspring are going to be infertile. So what does that mean when you breed these cattle? It means that if you have it, it's going to be hard to lose. And if you don't have it, it's going to be hard to get. So if you are going to line breed, start with an animal that's fertile, for one, because you're actually going to lose a little bit of that as you become more and more homozygous. You're going to lose a little bit of that fertility, but you'll gain it whenever you outcross and get that explosion. If what you outcross with is also an animal that is highly fertile. I know some of this can be confusing because of the terminology, and I don't want that to be a turnoff for you, because it can really, if you get these concepts down, it can take you to a whole nother level as far as your operation, as far as being a breeder, as far as being proactive and looking in the future and setting yourself up for success in the long term. You need to know these concepts so that you can utilize them. There is so much power in heterosis. It's what makes you different. It's what makes you stand out. It's your own type of, like I talked about with genetic defects being a cheat code. This is your genetic cheat code whenever you have heterosis. But with that comes a little inconsistency. Homozygosity will lock in certain traits that you're breeding for and become consistent. So there's that yo-yo. You find your balance. But whatever you do, do it intentionally. I'm not going to blame you because I do it. I actually have, if I'm going to do 10 matings, I want a certain portion of them, a certain percentage of them to be for making money. I want a certain percentage of them to be for making the future, whether that comes at $1 now or later on. But don't be short-sighted in now. because it not only hurts you and your operation in the future, it hurts the entire industry, because if everybody breeds for the now, we end up putting ourselves in a corner that's going to be very hard to get out of. So go out. I also encourage you to view cattle that you're using and breeding, especially these bulls, in person. If you're not going to use the hot thing that everybody's using, be intentional and go put in the time, the effort, the miles, and lay your eyes on and investigate and study the animal that you're going to use. Try to see its parents, try to see some of its offspring if you can. The more information that you can pack in and gain about the animal you're going to use, especially if you're going off the reservation a little bit, not using a popular one, like I said, you're not going to reap the rewards for 5 to 9 years down the road. So that decision is so important that you get it right. Don't be lazy with that decision. Livestock kids and livestock people are extremely passionate, and they think about this stuff all the time. So put in the miles, go lay your eyes on them, meet new people. It's the best way to set yourself up for success. And Doug Pierce always said this, and I'll leave you with this before we close. Your gut is right. Breed them how you like them. Because if you don't like them, you're the one that's going to have to take care of them every day when it's cold, when it's rainy, and the drought. If you don't like looking at them, then you're not going to put in the time and the effort. So breed them how you like them, and it'll end up paying off for you. Trust your gut. Thank y'all for tuning in. Hey, I encourage you, whatever platform you're listening on, go right now and subscribe to it. It's a very simple click of a button that helps us out tremendously. I'm grateful for you listening. Thank you for hanging on. Thank you for all your support. Y'all have a blessed day.